Hello, my name is Ken Getz. I'm a senior consultant with MCW Technologies. In this presentation, you'll learn how to change and reset the caption bar within Access 2007. This is actually quite easy, except for the fact that you have to work with some database properties that may or may not yet exist when you want to change the caption bar. In this presentation, you'll learn how. I've loaded the sample database change access caption bar.acdb into Access 2007. I've loaded the sample form. And one thing to note right away is this form allows you to retrieve the current access caption and change the access caption. And this information is stored on a database by database basis. That is, if you change the access caption in this database and then load a different database, you'll see the original access caption unless that database has a specific access caption. Let me demonstrate how this works. Let's change the access caption and click the Set New Caption button, and now you'll see up here we've changed the caption. We can put it back by just clicking the Reset Caption button, which just puts back the original caption. What's going on under the covers is that we have a procedure to retrieve the access caption and another procedure to set the access caption. We'll look at the code to see how that works. Here in the BAS Caption module, you'll see two procedures. There's Set Title Bar and Get Title Bar. And these two procedures do most of the work. In Set Title Bar, you pass in a variant value, so it could be coming from a text box, and then this sets the title bar. We'll call the setDB property method, which is defined elsewhere in this module, and we pass in the name of the property we'd like to set, because what we're doing is setting a database property, and the database property is app title. We say what type of property it's supposed to be. It's a text property, and then its value. Now I want to make sure the value of this is a string, not a variant, so I'm tacking an empty string onto the value that I receive as a parameter, which is coming from a text box. Now one trick to this is if you want to change the title bar and have it display immediately, you need to call the refresh title bar method of the application object, which forces the title bar to immediately refresh. Well, let's talk about database properties. I have here a procedure in this module called BAS Properties, a little procedure which shows off the current database properties. This procedure loops through all of the values in the properties collection of the current database. It prints out the name of the property, the value of the property, and then prints a blank line. Now, why have I bothered breaking this up onto separate lines? Because not all properties currently have values, and so retrieving their value would trigger an exception. In addition, some of the properties have values that I can't print this easily. Maybe they're objects and I need to print their properties, and doing that would cause an exception as well. I've turned off error handling, so I'll just skip over the ones that caused me errors. And by putting them on separate lines like this, the code can just keep running. Let me bring up the immediate window, put my cursor inside this procedure, and press F5. And you'll see here a list of all of the current database properties. Most of these are things you can set using the user interface. Here is the app title property. Now the problem is this app title property doesn't exist for a new database, which means if you want to set the property, your code is responsible for creating it. Luckily, the code in this module does that for you. We haven't seen it yet, but it does. This procedure takes in a property name, a type for the property, and I've used this data type enum only because in the object browser you'll see that the data types are all clumped together in this data type enum. It doesn't help you in terms of making sure you type the right thing when you call this procedure, but it does help you get some IntelliSense, and it does indicate as you look at the code what the correct type of value would be. We also have the setting, the value for the property, and this procedure returns a true or false value indicating whether or not it succeeded in setting the property. We set up error handling. If something goes wrong, we jump down to this error handler. We get a reference to the current database and store it away. And now we attempt to set the property, whose name is, well, app title in this case, to the value you pass in. You can't check to see if a property exists. The only thing you can do is try to set it and see if an error occurs. Well, if app title does exist, if you've already created the property, this will just set the value, store it away. We'll refresh the property so our code can retrieve the most current value of the property. We get out of here passing true back. The first time you try to set the title, however, this line of code will fail because the property doesn't yet exist. In that case, we'll jump to our error handler down here. The error number you'll get will be 3270. That indicates that the property wasn't found. So we have to create it. To create it, we'll call this procedure createDBProperty, which is down here, passing the same information through to that procedure. And this procedure just attempts to do the same exact thing. Given a database reference, it'll create a property object, and it will call the createProperty method of the database, given the property name, its type, and its value. Given that new property object, we'll append it to the properties collection of the database and then refresh the properties. By refreshing the properties, it exposes them so we can interact with them in code. If nothing goes wrong, we just exit. If something does go wrong, we message box or display the error and get out of here. Coming back up to this code, if we manage to create the property, we'll set the return value to true. If something went wrong, for example, if some other error occurred, we'll come here and just display the error, set this procedure's return value to false, and get out of here. So once we've created the property, we're all set. We've actually even set the value of the property at the same time. So up here, when we attempt to set the property, we'll either set it or create it and set it. Once we're done, we refresh the title bar. How about getting the value of the title bar? The app title property either exists or it doesn't. If it does exist, we can retrieve its value right here. By setting onErrorResumeNext, we won't handle the error if something went wrong. We'll just attempt to retrieve the property called app title. If an error occurs, that means the app title property didn't exist, and in that case, error.number will be something other than 0. If that's the case, well, what do we return? I'm just going to guess, and I'm going to return Microsoft Access as the title bar if we get a non-zero value back for the error number. If we got 0 for the error number, that meant the title did exist, we were able to retrieve it, and we pass it back as the return value of this function. All you need to do is import this one module into your application, and you can call the setTitleBar and getTitleBar methods of this module to get and set the Access title bar. One thing to note, you can change the title bar manually in the Access options. Here under Current Database, you can set it here. The only point of doing the work you've seen is if you want to change it as part of your application. If you want to change it manually, once, change it here. If you want to change it other places in the application while the code is running, then you need to use the code you'll find in this module.